Henry Winkler's parents used to call him a dumb dog in German. They would lock him in his room for weeks because they thought he was lazy and stupid. He failed geometry 4 times and wasn't even allowed to attend his own graduation. But the truth was something no one knew, not even Henry. He spent most of his life thinking he wasn't smart enough, until one day, at 31 years old, he discovered by accident what had been holding him back his entire life. By the 1980s, after Happy Days ended, he couldn't get hired anywhere. His career had fallen apart, and he was making desperate calls just to survive. Then, in 1982, something happened that almost destroyed everything. But what he's done since then will leave you speechless. Henry Winkler was born on October 30, 1945, in Manhattan, New York. But his story really began before he was even born. His parents, Harry and Elsa Winkler, had escaped Berlin, Germany, in 1939. Harry told his wife that they were going on a short business trip to New York, but he had no plans to return. He knew the Nazis were taking over and didn't want to scare her. That quiet decision saved their lives. They boarded the SS Manhattan and left everything behind, their home, their family, their past. Harry started his lumber business again in New York with the help of melted-down jewelry that Elsa had hidden inside chocolate boxes. Most of the people they knew in Germany were killed in the Holocaust. Their escape was one of the last possible before the borders closed for good. They named their son Henry, not just because they liked the name, but in memory of Harry's brother Helmut. Helmut had planned to escape with them but stayed behind one extra day to finish business. That one day cost him his life. He fled to Amsterdam but was eventually caught and sent to Auschwitz. He and their mother were murdered in 1942. Henry's middle name, Franklin, came from President Franklin Roosevelt, who had helped extend the family's visas letter by letter until they were allowed to stay in America permanently. Henry still keeps those letters to this day. Growing up, Henry lived in a conservative Jewish home in New York with his sister, Beatrice. They followed Jewish traditions, though they didn't keep kosher. Their synagogue was built by Holocaust survivors and stood just a few blocks from their home. Every summer, Henry's family went to Lake Mahopac, where he found peace on the water. Water skiing became his escape from the pressure of school and the weight of his father's expectations. At home, the trauma of the Holocaust quietly hung in the air. The neighborhood was full of other refugee families from Germany and Hungary, all trying to build new lives from the ashes of the old ones. Harry rebuilt his lumber business from scratch and turned it into a success. He wanted Henry to take over one day, but Henry had different dreams. He wanted to be an actor. To Harry, that felt like a betrayal. He had risked everything to survive, escaped death, and rebuilt a life, only for his son to want to play pretend. That disappointment built a wall between them. Every time Henry talked about acting, his father saw it as a rejection of the family's struggle and sacrifice. School was a nightmare for Henry. At PS 87, he studied every night, but when it came time to read aloud in class, the words vanished from the page. He'd study hard, remember everything, and then forget it all the next morning. He learned to memorize plays because he couldn't read them properly. Once, during a school performance, he couldn't even spell the word invincible. He tried his best, but his brain just wouldn't cooperate. For most of his childhood, he hadn't read a single full book. His classmates thought he was funny, but that humor was his armor, a way to hide his fear and shame. Every day, he prayed the teacher wouldn't call on him to read. At home, things were worse. His parents called him Dummer Hund, which means dumb dog in German. They truly believed he was lazy. When he brought home bad grades, they yelled at him, grounded him, and even locked him in his room for weeks. His father couldn't understand how his son, the child of a hard-working businessman, couldn't pass a simple geometry class. Henry's confidence was destroyed at a young age. The only thing that made him feel alive was acting. But even that, his parents didn't allow at first. In high school, he wasn't even permitted to join theater. Still, he found ways. He memorized lines by listening, performed secretly, and built his own world where he felt capable. Acting became more than a dream, it was survival. By 1963, After failing geometry 4 times, Henry wasn't allowed to attend his own graduation. His diploma arrived by mail. It was humiliating. He applied to 28 colleges, desperate for a second chance. Only 2 accepted him, and one of them was Emerson College. Even there, he struggled. He couldn't read textbooks, so he memorized pages in small chunks and improvised the rest. Most professors thought he wasn't very talented, but he refused to give up. In 1970, he auditioned for Yale University's drama program. He couldn't read the audition monologue, so he made it up on the spot, and somehow, he got in. At Yale, things didn't get easier. His classmates came from wealthy families, confident and well-read. Henry still couldn't read scripts, so he memorized phonetically, listening to the rhythm of words. He directed plays, performed constantly, and worked harder than anyone else just to keep up. His professors doubted him, but he kept going. His first paying job was in 1970, earning $150 a week as the Pirate King in a touring show. He couldn't remember all the lyrics, so he improvised. At first, audiences laughed for the wrong reasons, then they started laughing for the right ones. But then came disaster. In 1971, while performing in Washington, D.C., he forgot his lines completely. The director fired him on the spot and called him unhireable. The word spread through the theater community. Henry sat alone in his small apartment, broke and eating cheap noodles, wondering if he should give up acting forever. 2 years later, he poured everything into a Broadway show. It closed after one night. He lost his savings and was left with just $47. He worked for a moving company, carrying furniture for $3.25 an hour. Even then, he kept auditioning. Once, he was rejected for a deodorant commercial because the director said he looked too sweaty to sell antiperspirant. Humiliation piled on top of heartbreak. He was lost. After being fired from a play called Moon Children at the Arena stage in D.C., Henry returned to New York, humiliated and broke. Yale had once paid him $173 a week, now he was barely surviving. But he didn't give up. He started doing TV commercials. They weren't glamorous, but they paid enough to keep him acting in small theater productions for free. The cruel twist was that his dyslexia, though he didn't know it yet, made auditions a nightmare. Cold reading scripts felt like staring at another language. He had to memorize everything and pretend he was improvising. That struggle forced him to become quick, creative, and incredibly real. Then came The Lords of Flatbush in 1974. Henry played Bucci Weinstein, a kid hiding his intelligence behind jokes and confidence. Sylvester Stallone played Stanley, the leader in a leather jacket. The movie, set in 1950s Brooklyn, hit a nerve with audiences. It was raw, nostalgic, and human. That film quietly gave Henry his first taste of success. Stallone later said it was a story about friendship and growth. But before Henry could enjoy it, his next big chance slipped away. In 1973, he landed a role in Crazy Joe, beating 200 other actors. It had a big cast: Peter Boyle, Eli Wallach, Rip Torn. But when the movie came out, his scenes had been almost completely cut. His big break vanished overnight. Back in New York, Henry joined an improv group called Off the Wall. It became his training ground. The fast pace of improv sharpened his instincts. Soon after, his agent told him to move to Los Angeles. Henry hesitated. He didn't think he had a movie star face. But his Flatbush co-star Perry King convinced him. So in September 1973, he gave himself 30 days to make it or go home. Within 5 days, he landed a small role on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. It paid $350, and though it was just one episode, it was his first taste of Hollywood. He could barely read the script, but he memorized his lines and made it work. Just 2 weeks later, his life changed forever. He auditioned for a new sitcom called Happy Days. The character was Arthur Fonzarelli, the Fonz. The audition script had only 4 lines. Henry didn't just read them, he became the character. He combed his hair, threw the script aside, and walked out cool and confident. Gary Marshall, the show's creator, wasn't sure at first, but something about Henry's presence made him unforgettable. The Fonz was supposed to be a small side character, but by episode 5, he had become the star. Even at the height of fame, dyslexia haunted Henry. Every Monday during script readings, he froze. Words looked like walls he couldn't climb. He'd skip lines, mess up jokes, and feel like an imposter. Everyone saw him as the coolest guy on TV, but inside he felt broken. He would beg for scripts early just to memorize them in time. His castmates were kind and patient, but he always felt like he was struggling behind the scenes. There were other fights, too. The network, ABC, didn't want him to wear a leather jacket. They thought it made him look like a criminal. So in the first season, he had to wear a light blue windbreaker. Gary Marshall fought back, arguing that the Fonz couldn't be cool without his leather jacket. ABC finally agreed, but only if the jacket appeared in scenes with his motorcycle. So they started adding a motorcycle into almost every episode. Ironically, Henry couldn't even ride it. He crashed the first time he tried. By season 2, the Fonz was officially in leather, and Happy Days became the #1 show in America. Henry wanted more than fame, he wanted depth. He wanted audiences to see the Fonz's loneliness and heart, not just his coolness. By 1980, one of his leather jackets was placed in the Smithsonian Museum. One day on set in 1976, the jukebox jammed during a scene. Henry, staying in character, hit it with his fist, and the song started playing. It wasn't planned, but it became iconic. That one punch turned into the Fonz's magic touch. Suddenly, he could fix anything with a hit. Fans loved it. That moment made TV history. But even then, Henry didn't feel like he belonged. Fame didn't erase his insecurities. He often said, "The Fonz is my fantasy. Henry Winkler is the reality." By 1977, he was earning $10,000 an episode, and by the end, $50,000. He made millions from the show, plus merchandise and fame. But years later, he admitted he didn't manage his money wisely. "I wish I knew then what I know now," he said. Between 1977 and 1980, the Happy Days set was both joyful and tense. Henry had become a national icon. ABC executives even wanted to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Henry refused. He didn't want to steal credit from his castmates. But the dynamic had already changed. The fame surrounding the Fonz created tension behind the smiles. To keep the peace, Gary Marshall organized charity softball games so the cast could bond. Ron Howard and Anson Williams even taught Henry how to pitch between takes. But small cracks started to show. In 1978, rumors spread about a conflict between Henry and Anson over a comedic bit. Nothing was ever proven, but people noticed the shift in energy. Winkler received Emmy nominations in 1976 and 1977 but always credited the team, not himself. Still, not everyone was happy. In 1977, Tom Bosley, who played Mr. Cunningham, reportedly confronted Henry directly, frustrated that the Fonz was becoming the center of a show meant to be about family. Bosley was a veteran actor and believed strongly in balance. Their relationship remained professional, but the tension was real. Henry Winkler's parents used to call him a dumb dog in German. They would lock him in his room for weeks, believing he was lazy and disobedient. He failed geometry 4 times and wasn't even allowed to attend his own graduation. Everyone thought he just didn't care. But the truth was something else entirely, something no one knew. For most of his life, Henry thought he was broken. Then, at 31, he accidentally discovered what had really been holding him back all along. By the 1980s, after Happy Days ended, he couldn't get hired. He was calling people just to find work, desperate to stay afloat. It was a dark and painful time. But years later, Henry Winkler would become an example of hope, proving that life can begin again even when you think it's over. Henry was born on October 30, 1945, in Manhattan, New York City. His parents, Harry and Elsa Winkler, were German Jews who had escaped Berlin in 1939, just before the Nazis closed the borders. His father had secretly planned their escape, telling his wife they were going on a short business trip to America, but he never intended to return. That single decision saved their lives. They left everything behind, their home, their relatives, their past. They even melted down jewelry and hid it in chocolate boxes to bring with them to the United States. Almost everyone they knew in Germany was killed in the Holocaust. Henry grew up in New York, surrounded by the silence of survivors, people who rarely spoke of what they had lost. His father restarted his lumber business, building a new life from nothing. But trauma has a way of passing down through generations. Harry Winkler was a man hardened by survival. He expected perfection. Henry's struggles in school drove him crazy. When Henry couldn't read well, his father thought he wasn't trying hard enough. When his grades slipped, he called him dumber Hund, dumb dog. The words cut deep. Henry wasn't lazy or stupid, he had dyslexia, but no one knew it at the time. At school, Henry worked for hours every night but couldn't make sense of the pages. When teachers called on him to read aloud, his heart pounded. The words blurred together. He learned to hide it by memorizing what he could, pretending he could read smoothly. But every failure added more shame. When he finally failed geometry for the 4th time, he wasn't allowed to walk at graduation. His diploma was mailed to him. Even though he couldn't read well, he loved stories. He loved acting. He memorized lines by listening to others. He wanted to perform, to be seen for who he really was. But his father wanted him to join the family business. Acting, to Harry, was foolish, not a real job for a man. This created constant fights between them. Henry dreamed of performing. His father dreamed of control. After applying to 28 colleges, Henry was rejected by 26. 2 accepted him. He chose Emerson College, where he discovered theater and a new kind of confidence. From there, he went to Yale's School of Drama. He couldn't read most of the scripts, so he memorized the sounds instead. He listened to his classmates rehearse and learned by ear. It was exhausting, but he wouldn't quit. His professors doubted him, but his charm and emotional depth made him unforgettable. When he graduated, he started acting in New York. But success didn't come easily. He was broke most of the time, living on cheap noodles and taking small jobs. In one show, he forgot his lines and got fired. The director called him unhireable. That word haunted him. He thought maybe his father had been right all along. But then, in 1974, he landed a small movie role in The Lords of Flatbush, alongside Sylvester Stallone. Henry played a streetwise kid from Brooklyn, charming, funny, and full of heart. The movie wasn't huge, but it got him noticed. His character reminded people of something real. Soon after, he moved to Los Angeles to try television. He gave himself 30 days to make it. Within a week, he booked a small part on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Then came the audition that changed his life, Happy Days. The part was for a tough, cool biker named Arthur Fonzarelli, the Fonz. When Henry walked in, the role was small, only 4 lines. But instead of reading the script, he ad-libbed and embodied the character. He tossed the pages aside, slicked back his hair, and said his lines with confidence. Gary Marshall, the show's creator, immediately saw it. This was the Fonz. At first, the network didn't want him to wear a leather jacket because it looked too dangerous. So they made him wear a blue windbreaker. Gary Marshall fought for the jacket, arguing that it was part of the character's soul. Eventually, ABC agreed, but only if he wore it while near his motorcycle. So the writers added the bike to every episode. Henry couldn't even ride it. The first time he tried, he crashed. By season 2, the Fonz was officially in his leather jacket, and Happy Days became the biggest show on TV. Henry's coolness, confidence, and warmth made him a national hero. Kids copied his hairstyle. People shouted "Aye" in the streets. His jacket ended up in the Smithsonian Museum. But behind the fame, Henry still couldn't read the scripts easily. Every Monday, during table reads, he stumbled and skipped lines. He got scripts early so he could memorize them in advance. The shame never left. Everyone saw the Fonz, the confident, fearless icon. But Henry still felt like that little boy locked in his room. He stayed with Happy Days for 10 years. The show's success created tension on set. Some of the older cast felt overshadowed by the Fonz's popularity. Tom Bosley, who played Mr. Cunningham, once confronted Henry, upset that the show seemed to revolve around him. But Henry always tried to stay humble. He knew the fame could vanish overnight. Years later, when Bosley died of lung cancer at 83, Henry said, "He was our television father on the soundstage, but a father figure in real life." Ron Howard added that Bosley's warmth and timing were the heart of Happy Days. Whatever tension there had been, it faded with time. Not everyone's story ended happily. Erin Moran, who played Joni Cunningham, struggled deeply. She had been on the show since 1974, growing up on screen. In the later years, her off-camera struggles affected filming. Rumors spread that she had substance issues, though most were unconfirmed. In 2017, she died at 56 from stage 4 cancer, not drugs, as gossip suggested. Ron Howard tweeted, "Such sad, sad news. I'll always remember you lighting up the screen." Scott Baio joined the show at 16, playing Chachi. His chemistry with Erin Moran led to the spin-off Joni Loves Chachi, which Henry helped produce and direct. Despite political differences in later years, Henry still called Baio family. He said, "He came into my life when he was 12. He'll always be part of our family." In 1976, at 31 years old, Henry finally learned the truth: he had dyslexia. His stepson was being tested, and the doctor's questions felt eerily familiar. Everything made sense. The rage that followed was overwhelming. All the yelling, all the punishment, all the humiliation, for nothing. It wasn't stupidity. It was genetic, he said. He left Happy Days after season 10. But leaving the show didn't free him from the Fonz. It trapped him. Casting directors refused to see him as anyone else. They didn't even let him finish auditions. For almost 10 years, he couldn't get hired. He described it as psychic pain. He tried movies, but dyslexia made memorizing lines a nightmare. He'd freeze, miss cues, and feel humiliated. The fear that had followed him since childhood came roaring back. By the mid-1980s, he was taking small appearances on game shows just to survive. On the outside, he smiled. Inside, he was falling apart. His wife, Stacy, noticed. She pushed him into therapy. At first, he resisted, afraid to reopen old wounds. But therapy saved him. He unpacked the pain of being called dumb dog. He began to understand that his father's anger came from fear of failure, fear of loss. Slowly, Henry started healing. Then came an unexpected second chance. In 1998, Adam Sandler called him at 11:30 p.m. The actor originally cast in The Waterboy hadn't shown up. Sandler begged Henry to take the role of Coach Klein. Henry said yes. The next day, he walked onto set and nailed it. The film made $190 million. He later joked that he was paid so little, "I got a cookie and didn't even get to keep the clothes." But that movie resurrected his career. Behind the scenes, Henry also worked as an executive producer on MacGyver. He became known for his discipline, even finding people who talked about ratings. Some called him controlling, others called him focused. Years later, a legal dispute over profits resurfaced, dragging his name into court, but Henry stayed calm. He knew the business side was just another battle. He tried directing with Memories of Me in 1988. The movie bombed, earning just a few million on a $12 million budget. Critics liked it, but Hollywood didn't care. Henry took it hard. He thought maybe he wasn't cut out for directing. In the 1990s, he found new life through humor and humility. On The Critic and later Arrested Development, he played hilarious, flawed characters that mocked his old image. His dyslexia made it tough, but he used recordings to memorize his lines. He would show up early and practice for hours. Then, in 2018, at age 72, he finally won his first Emmy, for Barry. His role as Gene Cousineau gave him everything he'd ever wanted: respect, recognition, and peace. He improvised a scene about dyslexia in season 2, straight from the heart. It wasn't acting. It was truth. But Henry's biggest success wasn't in film or television, it was in books. In 2003, he co-wrote Hank Zipzer, a children's series about a boy with dyslexia. He was terrified to write it, thinking people would laugh at him. Instead, the series sold over 2 million copies and inspired millions of kids. He even funded a special dyslexia-friendly font himself. Teachers said children finished Hank Zipzer books 23% more often than others. Later, in the Hank Zipzer TV show, Henry played Mr. Rock, a teacher based on the real man who once told him he could succeed. During filming, he learned that teacher also had dyslexia. The moment broke him. It wasn't acting when he cried. By 2025, Henry released his 40th book, Being Henry, The Fonz, and Beyond. It became an instant bestseller. In it, he revealed painful truths, depression, money troubles, and thoughts of giving up in 1982. His therapist, he said, saved his life. During a reunion with Ron Howard, the two broke down in tears on stage. They hadn't spoken much since 1984, when career jealousy and life drifted them apart. Ron revealed that Henry missed his wedding. The moment went viral. Millions of fans watched them forgive each other. Henry admitted that for years, he hated the Fonz because the character had stolen his identity. But with time, he realized it had also saved him. Without the Fonz, there would be no career, no second chances, no books helping kids like him. He and his wife, Stacy, also made giving back part of their life. In 1990, they founded the Children's Action Network, which helped immunize over 200,000 kids. What started as a small $50,000 charity grew into a multimillion-dollar organization. In 2003, tragedy struck when his close friend John Ritter collapsed and died in Henry's arms on set. The shock triggered years of hidden anxiety. Henry later learned he had a mild form of epilepsy. He donated $500,000 to epilepsy research in Ritter's name, raising millions more and helping change CPR training laws in California. After all the fame, pain, and reinvention, Henry Winkler finally found peace. He's open about his dyslexia now, visiting schools and telling kids, "Your brain isn't broken. It just learns differently." From the boy locked in his room, called a dumb dog, to the man who won an Emmy at 72, wrote 40 books, and inspired millions, Henry Winkler's story isn't just about fame. It's about survival, forgiveness, and finally understanding that being different was never a weakness. It was his greatest strength all along.